Alright, let's look at how we divide large networks into smaller ones. This process is often referred to as subnetting. So when you break an IP address down into its binary equivalent like this, you see that each octet is represented with an 8-bit binary number. This address is a class C, so the first 3 octets, or the first 24 bits, represent the network portion of the address, and the last octet, or the last 8 bits, represent the host portion. So what we are doing when we subnet is we are borrowing bits for the network from the host portion. If we take the address 192.168.1.0 and we say that we want to divide this network into 2 subnets or 2 networks, we can borrow 1 bit from the host portion of the address or the network. This is where the subnet mask comes in. The subnet mask will tell you how many bits are borrowed. If we borrow the first bit, the subnet mask is going to be 255.255.255.128, or we can notate it as /25. This tells us that the first bit of the host portion is borrowed, and thereby dividing the Class C network into 2 networks. If we look at the first bit in the address that we borrowed, we can tell which one is the first network and which one is the second. If the borrowed bit value is 0, we know this is the first network. If its value is 1, we know this is the second network. So we end up with 192.168.1.0/25 and 192.168.1.128/25 as our 2 networks. So the 2 networks each have 126 usable hosts. We say usable addresses or usable hosts because we cannot use the first and the last address of each network. This is because the first address is the actual address of the network and the last address is the broadcast address. The /25 is a way of notating the subnet mask without writing it out as 255.255.255.128. And what it actually stands for is how many bits are being used in the network portion of the address. A standard Class C address is going to be notated as a /24 because 24 bits are used as the network portion and the remaining 8 bits are used as the host portion. So when we borrow a bit from the host portion to increase our number of networks, the number increases to /25 because we added another bit to the network address from the host portion. Let's try this again, but this time let's divide our Class C network into 4 subnets. So to get 4 subnets, we need to borrow 2 bits from the host portion. So when we borrow 2 bits, ask yourself, how many combinations of 0 and 1 can we make with 2 bits? Well, we have 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, and 1, 1, right? So 4 combinations is what we get. What this means is that we can get 4 networks or subnets by borrowing 2 bits. So we can get our network addresses by looking at these 2 bits, and given their binary value, we can determine that the first network is 192.168.1.0, the second is 192.168.1.64, the third is 192.168.1.128, and the fourth is 192.168.1.192. So we get 4 networks, each with 62 usable hosts. What if we wanted to segment this Class C network into 8 networks? Well, if we borrow 1 more bit for a total of 3 bits, how many combinations of 0 and 1 can we get with 3? Well, we get 8 combinations, as you can see here, which means we get 8 networks or subnets by borrowing 3 bits. The reason we talk about subnet masking in terms of binary numbers, bits, bytes, and borrowing is because it's important for us to understand it the way our networking equipment does. When we understand how the network works, we can predict how our network equipment will behave, and therefore we will be better equipped to manage and plan that equipment. With that said, in the real world, you really don't have time to sit around and count bits and bytes and borrow from here and there. The best thing you can do is memorize subnetting charts like these that break the subnets down at a glance. When you understand how the subnets break down, you memorize these charts and you can look at the address and subnet mask and know everything that you need to know about that network. There will be questions on the JNCIA Junos exam about subnetting and identifying classes of networks. So take the time to watch this video again if you feel the need to and study these charts. You can find more subnetting charts with a quick Google search, and I suggest that you do. Some of the questions on the exam might ask you to choose a subnet mask that will allow for a certain number of hosts and networks. Others might ask you to identify the class of a given address. Others might ask how many hosts are available in a given subnet, and so on. So be sure that you take the time to understand these concepts so that you can better answer questions like that quickly. There will be harder questions on the exam than these subnetting questions, so be sure that you can answer them quickly. You don't want to spend a whole lot of time on these questions.